Hello, everybody. Gage says it's empty. Let's go see what's in the fridge today. Hey everybody, thanks for stopping by Gregsbeerreviews today. Today's beer comes from Jack's Abbey Brewing, or Craft Lagers, that's what they call themselves, Jack's Abbey's Craft Lagers. This is their Bourbon Barrel Aged Framing Hammer Baltic Porter, IBU's 45, unfiltered, unpasteurized. And Rico sent me this beer, and he's got the thing on the side, little yellow sticker, telling me they've written it in black ink, their lot number, and it says 03/07/2017, March the 7th of 2017. So they've done a lot of different variants of this beer. I found that out when I went to Beer Advocate, Rate Beer, and Untapped. I could not find the correct version of this. Beer Advocate has it listed at 10%. Rate Beer has it listed at 10.5%. And Untapped has the Bourbon Barrel Aged Framing Hammer listed at 10%. I couldn't find this edition. It may be there, but I couldn't find it, guys. And Rico sent me a page here, and this is an 11%er. So all three of the sites are wrong. I'm not saying it. I couldn't find it. I don't spend 20 minutes trying to find this. I go to each site and type it in, and whatever it returns, if I can find a 2017 edition, I look for that. I couldn't find it. So, and he tells me here, excuse me, 11% Baltic Porter aged in bourbon barrel with 55 IBUs. He bought it last week for $8.75. Not a bad price for that big of a beer. And he sent me the regular version, which I have already reviewed, the plain Jane Framing Hammer. He says first brewed in 2012. He says Untapped has the correct ABV on this. That's why I was confused, because they've got 10% on the site I'm looking at. So I couldn't find the 2017 edition, guys. Bottle on date is on the label, which I read to you. And it says it's released every April. Also has a new label design for this year. So I apologize. I looked. I could not find the 2017 edition of this beer for the Bourbon Barrel aged at 11%. All three sites have it listed at 10 or 10.5%. So it is what it is, guys. I mean, in order to have Jack's Abbey Framing Hammer Bourbon Barrel aged 2017. That way you can find it. I mean, why do you have to jump through hoops to find something out? It blows my mind why you have to do. And if you're in the store and you're on your smartphone trying to figure out what you're buying or what it is or whatever, sometimes it gets a little insane. So I do appreciate Rico picking this up and sending it to me, but all three sites have it listed at either 10.5 or 10%. This is 11%, so I'm not going with anything these guys have said. As far as I'm concerned, all three of them are out. Usually I don't do that on Untapped. They usually have it the correct, and he's telling me they have it correct. I just couldn't find it, guys. So let's see what it brings to the table here. This ought to be a very tasty beer. I did enjoy the Framing Hammer, and I got a feeling the Bourbon Barrel Aged version of it is going to be pretty damn tasty. I'm a big fan of a Bourbon Barrel Aged porter or stout. And this is a porter, they're calling it, so we'll see what it looks like. Usually the porters are a little lighter in the glass, a little bit of red ruby notes on the thin part of the glass like this one. Not pitch black like a lot of the stouts are. So let's see where this one ends up. So let's do it. Let's get it into the glass. I'm not going to read any commercial description or anything. Into the glass we go. A unique bottle size on this. Looks like a 500 milliliter or something like that. It's not a 12 ouncer, it's bigger than that. Cuisine is barbecue cheese, the earthy camembert fontina. The meat is beef, smoked meat, game, and grilled meat. Glassware to pint, Becker, non-toner mug, Science Sidel. I'm using my favorite snifter. And it says here can be sold for a long period of time. I can't think of a reason why you could not. I didn't pour a massive head, about a quarter finger on that, over into the light. Guys, it looks like a stout to me. I'm not getting any red ruby tinges around the thin part of the glass. It's pitch black. And these guys at the breweries can call it whatever they want to. They can call it a porter, they can call it a stout. Looks like a stout in the glass to me. To the nose we go. And they're calling it a Baltic porter, which is the European English style porter, and that's what it smells like to me. Not getting a big bourbon note on the nose. It's right out of the fridge though, that may change. Rich roasted caramel. Maybe a slight hint of some bittersweet chocolate. Very slight, ever so slight. Caramel, toffee, maybe some black molasses. A little disappointed on the bourbon notes that I'm getting. Alcohol is very well hidden for an 11%. The 10% was 55 IBUs. He's telling me this one, I don't think he tells me the IBUs on this. He does not. So we don't know what the IBUs are. It's not on the bottle as far as I know. Smells good. Let's dive in, see what we got. I was expecting more bourbon on this one than the regular framing hammer edition that he sent me. Not there. Not getting the bourbon notes. But they didn't. Either they put it in a second run bourbon barrel, something that's had beer in it before, or they didn't leave it in the bourbon barrels long enough. The bourbon is not on the nose and the bourbon is not on the taste. As I was blindfolded and sipping this, I would tell you it's not bourbon barrel aged. The bourbon barrel is that subdued. So, I'm impressed with that. I should be able to pick those notes up. But it's right out of the fridge. So let's sip on it for a little bit, let it come up to room temperature, and see if I can pick those notes up as it warms up to room temperature. And see what we end up with. Right now, I'm unimpressed. It's no better than the regular version that I had. But that may change. So let's let it warm up and see what we end up with, guys. Alright guys, I'm back. Myself on about 30 minutes or so. Not super impressed. I'll bet you be honest with you guys. I'm not super impressed with this. I don't think it's much better than the regular version of the framing hammer. The bourbon notes are not there. Not what they should be. I don't think they used first run bourbon barrels. If they did, they didn't leave it in there long enough. It looks more like a stout in the glass than it does a porter, but it's very, it's not going to say very, but it's a little on the thin side, which reminds me of the porter. It doesn't have a creamy mouthfeel like a lot of the stouts do. It's definitely above average beer for the ABV that this one is, but I'm not super impressed with it. Rico tells me that he spent $8.75 for this bottle of beer. For an 11%, not too awful bad for that price. But for something that's been in a bourbon barrel, I don't know how long they left it in the bourbon barrel. Month, 2, 3, 6. I was expecting more bourbon notes than I'm getting on this. And now it's even warmed up to room temperature. I'm still not getting it. I'm just not getting it. This is not a 10 beer, guys. To me, I don't judge. Positive note, the alcohol is super well hidden for this big of a beer, and Rika tells me this is a 11%, and everybody else has it at either a 10 or a 10.5%. They don't have the 2017 edition, so they changed something up. The recipe changed a little bit, and a lot of times, even the same recipe, a lot of times will change the ABV a little bit. But the bourbon notes are not there, guys. It's in my honest opinion, they wasted their time putting this in a bourbon barrel, because I personally think it's either not a first run bourbon barrel, something that's never had beer in it before, or if it has, they didn't leave it in there long enough to get that. They're telling me here on Beer Advocate Rate Beer it's either 10, it was a 10 or a 10.5%. This is at 11%, probably getting a little bit more alcohol from the bourbon barrels. But it's not prominent. It's not prominent. I've had bourbon barrel aged stuff that was 8% that had bigger bourbon notes than this. So I'm a big fan of the Jack's Abbey's beers, but this is a little lackluster to me. I do think it's an A beer. It's very well made. The alcohol is super well hidden, but to expect big bourbon notes on this when they've got it right on the bottle, bourbon barrel aged in big letters. Framing Hammer Baltic Porter. It's not there. The bourbon is not there, guys. It's in the back seat on a school bus in the back seat, 30 rows back. It just doesn't do it. To me, honestly, it's no better than the regular version. So I do think it's an A beer. I am going to give it an A. 92 for is what I'm going to give this beer. I do think it's a well-made beer, but the bourbon notes are so subdued. I wouldn't put that in big bold letters on the front of the bottle. Now that I've had it, Rico spent his hard-earned money on it and sent it to me, I probably would not buy this beer. But I do appreciate him doing that and sent it to me. Let me review it for you guys. The bourbon notes are not there, guys. It's just not enough bourbon notes for me to justify the price of the beer and for them to have that in big bold letters on the front of the bottle. So, yeah. Alright, let's run over to Beer Advocate. Like I said, I told you they have it. This is 10%, this is 11%, so that's as far as we're going to go. Not giving the grade or anything because they don't have the right one listed here. Over to Rate Beer. Rate Beer has it at 10.5%. It's 11%, not the right grade, so they don't have the right one listed for this. Not going there either. And over to Untappd, when I'm very surprised I couldn't find the 2017 edition of this. They just have it listed as Bourbon Barrel Aged Framing Hammer. 10%, 55 IBUs, not the right version of this. Couldn't find it. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm sure somebody will post, here it is, here's the link. You shouldn't have to jump through hoops to try to find these beers, guys. You ought to be able to type in Jack's Abbey's Bourbon Barrel Aged Framing Hammer 2017 and it'll come up the right one. It did not. So, and I searched over Untappd because these guys usually have it right. And couldn't find it. I could not find it. So that's where I'm going to put it. If you've had this one from Jack's Abbey, this is their Bourbon Barrel Aged version of their Framing Hammer. 11% new for 2017. Let me know what you think. Unimpressed. I still think it's a great beer, but not to the 10 category, not even to the 9 category. 8 for me. So, but I do think it's a well-made beer. Alcohol is very well hidden for 11%er. So if you've had this one, let me know what you think, guys. Come back tomorrow. Let's go see what's in the fridge.